I am looking over a blog post that Simon suggested that I look at before we talk this morning on our picnic with Daniel Bassel. And I think that it is indicative of much of what Simon does. I think it might be described as what Emily Dickinson called viewing at slant, coming at things from the sides and from behind and in unexpected ways. And the title of this blog post, La Vie Active, is a good example of that, because what we're talking about here is what here in the States we call the real world, life after school. And the French have a phrase for it as well, la vie active. But Simon's work has been, professional work has been as a teacher of English language learners. And in this post, which I have also annotated with hypothesis, here he describes two of the research projects. One of them is this one that you see right here, that describes some of the research behind CLAVIER, which he talks about. He describes a little bit up here, but these Google slides are really good ways of entering into the work that Simon is doing, the research work, and also down here as well, which actually really does a better job of describing it. And it talks about the what CLAVIER is an acronym for, which I can never remember. So this post is a way of introducing us to the work of CLAVIER, which is basically about developing affinity spaces for learners, English language learners. And it is it's full of interesting ideas about how the current system is broken and how we might create a new system that works in the new networked space. As he says, as quoting Steve Wheeler, he says that networks are everything. I love so much about this post because it does move from describing the research that he's doing, in other words, the motivation for the academic motivation for change, and then he moves from that to the philosophical motivation for change. Basically, there are better systems, and what we have now is broken. What we're being proposed, there's a really great section in here where he talks about the commercial and entrepreneurial attempts to do what he wants to do. In other words, help folks learn English who are living in France and other countries. And he notes that if you follow the money, you quickly see that not only are there public institutional problems but there are private commercial institutional problems, all of which are attempting to subvert possible change, which is why I think, he calls it an education protection racket. And it really is. And, he says, he says the challenge is enormous. It is enormous. But I do say over in my comments in the hypothesis notes that yes and no. I think change can happen immediately. Change can be simply opening your door to your classroom and making the boundaries of it permeable, which is what I try to do in my classrooms. But in many ways, my classrooms are still pretty closed spaces. And I think it is true that while this is not easy, that if you do change the initial conditions, truly change them, then it might be that what Simon has done here and his colleagues have done here is really remarkable, because it is a simple prospect. He just says it says it right here. What students need is meaning and dialogue with peers and elders. And I suppose you could boil that down even further. It's just people just need real talk. Real talk. I think that fits in with what Daniel Bassel says about tutor-mentor relationships as real talk. And I think there's a lot to be learned from Daniel that Simon really could pick up quite a bit from him, and that Daniel could also pick up quite a bit from Simon. So I think, as he says here, the prospect is that we work out loud, that we think out loud, and that we hang around with each other and simply face up to the impossible task of changing public education. It may be tilting at windmills, but this is the only way for us to continue, is to open up and try to foment conditions where new ecosystems can begin to live within old ones, or even supplant them. Because ultimately, as he says at the end of his article, is this really, these are what we're trying to do is for our children, our future. And please help is what is the real talk that he asked for earlier. Let's help each other. So I'm hoping that this screencast has shed a little light for you on Simon's work, and just note that there's a tremendous amount of activity here, of sharing, of making this blog space as permeable as he can, of connecting, and I'm really looking forward to talking with him and Daniel today about some of the wisdom that's in this.